morning.
Watch me.
Just watch me now. Just watch me now. I got something for you, a little more for you. You won't believe your eyes. Just watch me now. I got something for you, a little more for you. You won't believe your eyes. Just watch me now. Just watch me now.
Good morning and welcome to Microsoft Ignite 2024 here in Oslo, Norway. My name is Jon Jaren. I am responsible for the solution area Azure Data and AI. And wow, we have a great agenda for you, maybe our best ever. We have both the Azure and modern work tracks, and I just want to remind you to follow the instructions closely because we will be dividing this room after the keynote. But without any more delay, I want to give a warm welcome to our own corporate vice president, Bjørn Olstad, to deliver the keynote.
Starting with the Watch Me video, I think it expresses my feeling that there is change happening. And personally, I feel so privileged to be able to work on that opportunity with AI. How can we make this make meaningful sense for individuals and teams? How can we do that? What we have here in Norway is that we have more than 550 people working down in Bjørvik and in these beautiful offices across Norway, working on experiences, AI, Copilot, M365, and asking ourselves, to critique ourselves, M365, if we look historically, has been about shipping an email, shipping a chat, distributing video, but we have no clue what you actually talk in that email or that chat or that video. Now we do. We understand what you talk about, right? And what does that actually mean? What is the future of communication and collaboration experiences when the system actually understands what you're trying to achieve, what you're actually talking about? That's the challenge that we are working on. And this keynote is about how can you meaningfully contribute. This is my view of what is the world agenda right now. Can we save the climate on the planet? Can we make AI actually benefit humanity or be a challenge for, as opposed to be a challenge for humanity? And both in the physical and digital world, how can we reverse the current trends and make it a safer world? And at least in my view, if we can align economic opportunity with these sustainability goals, then we have a chance to actually make progress at the speed which is needed right now. You're all familiar with what has happened. 1 year ago, when I asked how many have tried ChatGPT, there was 10% not raising their hand. Are there anyone that has not tried it right now? No, but nobody dares. There are no. But something happened. AI has been kind of growing for a decade, but then kind of with large language models, there was kind of a quality breakthrough that made it transition to popular culture. So what is actually the pattern shift that we have seen? Well, first of all, if you look backwards in time, you've then had experiences where people have had to learn how to interact with computers. And computers, just like I said historically in M365 as well, has made sense of structured data. And then we have text that we have annotated, but it's possible to search and find and ship an email to another person, but the system didn't understand it. So from a system perspective, text was, and video was a blob that we didn't have insight to what is actually the content. And what has happened is that kind of with generative AI, first of all, the computer has learned to interact with humans on the terms of a human. So you can talk, you can write, you can use video as an input source, and the system can respond with the same mechanisms. And on the back-end side, as opposed to a deterministic kind of setup, where you talk often to a SQL database and state is stored in that SQL database, you are talking with a reasoning engine, which is non-deterministic. that both talks with existing structured data sources, semi-structured data sources, but also text, also voice, also video, etc., and can make sense and reason about that. So what is the new class of experiences and value and platforms and things that needs to be built to leverage this pattern? If you haven't dived into it, this is a recommendation for me on spend an hour on YouTube to watch this session. Then you will learn a little bit more about the details of how large language models, how they are constructed, what they are optimized for, and also issues and challenges connected with them. So this pattern change, kind of one thing that kind of for me has been an important realization that often when we have designed systems, like in M365 sending an email, then you thought, well, I send an email to Karin or to Kristin or something, I don't expect the system to understand what I write. So there is a part of that process which is purely digital, and there is a part which is human. And reasoning about it is clearly we thought about like human. If you go to a doctor and you get a diagnosis, you think about, well, the results from my blood test, that's a digital system, but actually concluding on the diagnosis is a human process. And if you go through example by example, there has been kind of this obvious division between what is supported by digital means, what is supported by human means. And we need to start to rethink that. And the most interesting is not when you replace human activities with digital, but when you start to get things to work together and you increase the proficiency of individuals. Not replace individuals, but increase the proficiency. So if you look at the patterns, here I'm showing search and chat, and I try to ask the question, Immanuel Kant, that was a philosopher, what could we learn from him to design responsible AI principles today? If you do that in search, what you actually do is that you ask for advice. So we get a list of links and ads that is reading sources proposed to me to read and form my opinion on how I can solve that problem. If you go to chat on the other side, then a dangerous thing seen from a system provider like Microsoft is that it comes back with an opinion. It doesn't give me data for me to form an opinion, it comes back with an opinion. And then the company, like Microsoft in this case, could be accused of this opinion I don't agree with. It's negative or whatever. That's one issue in a sense. And here you see it's actually quite impressive. Well, if you listen to Immanuel Kant, you have to make AI so that it supports human decision processes and not undermines it, and it needs to be fair and not introduce biases. But another example is kind of, well, how are these LLMs actually constructed? Is this actually an answer from Immanuel Kant, or if you look on the data on the left-hand side, or is this a reflection on everyone later that has written about Immanuel Kant? And what you get is actually not his teachings, but you get reasoning about his teaching. So there are many hard problems connected to this new model. If you, anyone here that are doing a startup right now, could you raise your hand? Wow, that was too bad. Nobody are doing a startup. Here, see in the US, there was 8,000 AI startups in 23. And one interesting thing is that it's not enough to have a positive return on capital if you go to venture capital company, right? You have to be competitive with the best in class. And right now, the expectation on generative AI is so high that it's super hard to get venture capital on anything else. So semiconductor is probably also correlated generative AI. But if you work in enterprise software, on health tech, etc., it's super hard to get funding. So this has changed where money is flowing, where the interest is going. And it's actually hard to do startups in other fields right now. Then kind of one digression, if you look back, when has there been knowledge revolutions in the world before? There was one with the printing press that happened in 1450 with Gutenberg. If you then fast forward 50 years, then you see that it had spread. If you look to Norway, you see that we were not that interested in knowledge. It was not that important. For us, you see even Sweden and Denmark is clearly ahead of us. It's quite embarrassing, right? One interesting thing here, if you look on the lower right-hand side, that's the Osmanian Empire. And they made a deliberate decision to not adopt the printing press because they were concerned that if knowledge becomes too accessible for people, it will be hard to control the population from a political and religious perspective. Completely correct, right? and everyone sitting and copying books by hand, they will lose their job. So they took a decision to not import this knowledge revolution as the printing press. The only bad thing is that then, well, that happened in West Europe, and productivity switched towards West Europe, and quality of life is correlated to productivity, so that made a change in how the world developed for that decision. So if you then fast forward to last year, what has happened with generative AI? And here you see the adoption rates of how percentages of companies that have adopted generative AI, about 62. What do you guess is the Norway number? Any guesses? 0? No, it's actually 86. So it's looking promising. We have been waking up, understanding that knowledge is actually... So if you look on wealth historically, it was about owning land, then it was about owning production capacity, and in the future it will be about owning knowledge capacity. So to not miss out on this opportunity is super important, and this is very inspiring. One of the parts is kind of back to Immanuel Kant in a sense. How can I do that in a responsible way? And how can I get help from system providers? So what we do at Microsoft is, first of all, to write down what are our principles, but not just write it down. They have to be implemented. How do we implement it? So in the Azure Stack, that will be one of the sessions after here, what can you get for free as a part of the platform that you actually use? And what you need to implement. For instance, in my team, there are deployment safety boards for everything that we do that have the responsibility to make sure that the decisions are made early on in projects and late in projects, and are we adhering to all these principles. The return on investment is looking quite encouraging from these projects that have happened during the last year. So what is this transformation all about? If you start at the bottom of the stack, you have the silicon game, in a sense that there is a new breed. If you just look on the rise and importance of NVIDIA, it's a good testimony to that. Silicon that enables a new scale on AI inference is the foundation. In terms of AI data center, here you see one of the Microsoft data centers in the US. The scale of how now this new digital infrastructure for the world is being built is just almost unimaginable. It's on a scale that has never been seen. And then, that we have talked about, there has been a breakthrough with large language models that I come back to in more depth, which is what is triggering kind of this next phase. But this pattern is also kind of that we are now rewriting the software stack completely. What is needed to build this new breed of applications that talk to a reasoning engine with human interaction metaphors. And on the top, there is just an explosion on how can you take that into different applications. So if you start at the bottom, if some of you saw the interview that Nicolai Tangen had with Satya in his podcast, recommend to listen to it. One of them was kind of how to be comfortable with competitors and rather kind of focus on how can we give everyone the broadest access to all innovation in the field of AI, as opposed to now you have to choose between Microsoft and others. That applies to Silicon with NVIDIA, AMD, and own development in Microsoft. And I've already talked about kind of scaling out so that you can get to a new level of scale for inference, to build better models, progress that, and make that available so the entire world can use that infrastructure to build a new breed of experiences. In terms of foundational models, that is what I've been in Microsoft for 15 years, and the transition from Ballmer to Satya, one of the most inspiring things is this: open up and not compete with everyone, but embrace everyone and focus on the outcome. And that you see kind of in the Azure Stack, it's no, you don't have to use Microsoft models. You get best of breed, you get investments that we do in small models, but you also get access to open source and competing elements so that you have the richest selections of AI models to apply. One concept which is important to think about if you reason about return on investment, where should you invest in the stack, how quickly do you need to get products to market, is that it's mathematically known that even with no algorithmic breakthroughs in AI, it is known that as we increase inference and data, the quality of the models will improve. That's just a mathematical fact. And what we know is that we are building inference capability at an exponential rate in Azure. And that creates kind of the strange element that we are on this exponential curve in quality that probably will be even sharper because of algorithmic progress. But we only get samples now and then. So it's kind of hard to reason about this problem that we live in an exponential improvement process, but you only get samples maybe every year, every second year, or something like that. So when you design something, are you going to bet against it, compete with it, or are you going to design systems that becomes more relevant when the next sample from this curve is coming? That I think is a key consideration for everyone to reason about. And obviously part of that was a trigger kind of the Microsoft OpenAI partnership. Who has the most ambitious plan in this field? That was kind of the early on partnership between Microsoft and OpenAI. And now it's kind of the commitment that every innovation that you see from OpenAI, including, for instance, the Sora, the video production capabilities, that they will become all available through Azure and the Microsoft stacks. So the software stack is evolving in this direction, and when we then go on top of that, you see this explosion of how to create experiences that are either enriched and AI enriched or AI first. So some of them are embedded in our products, some of them partners are doing, but there is a range of these co-pilots. So with that, I would like to introduce Vibeke Sundt. Vibeke is a modern work technical specialist at Microsoft. And you have been preparing for this event, right? And looked at Copilot, how you can use that.
Yes, absolutely. So I'll just open this. Hello, everyone. I thought I would give you a quick introduction and a demonstration of Copilot for Microsoft 365. And when doing this, we of course have to start in the Microsoft 365 chat area that we're in right now. And what's really unique about this chat is how we're able to ask questions and work and ask all the things we need to know against our own organizational data. So to give you an example of how you could do this, I wanted to use Microsoft Ignite as an example and how I use Copilot to help me prepare for this event. Because before this event, there's a lot of files and meetings and things that are being shared, so let's get Copilot to help us stay on top of this. So here I can ask Copilot by saying I need to prepare for Microsoft Ignite, and simply get Copilot to help me summarize recent information that is shared on this topic. And I've also asked her to get this in a table format, so it's a more structured view for me, and also given some instructions on how I want this to be presented. So here you see, coming down, we get some different types of information here with some emails coming. I get a few, I think I lost the internet. We'll try one more time. But really what is happening when we search in the way that we do right now is Copilot goes into my own organizational files and will look at access that I have on the topic that I'm searching for. So again here, we will get a little bit of information and a summarization of those files that comes here. But I also asked for some action items, if any, on this information. So quickly, I'm getting a good overview. I can easily go directly into this information from Copilot chat, or I can continue to ask questions and dig deeper into the information and ask questions that I want to know. But I want to give you one last example, a bit more application-specific use for Copilot, because before this event, there was also a lot of syncs and a lot of meetings preparing for the different presentations. But I wasn't able to join all of those meetings. But still, I was able to follow the meetings and use Copilot afterwards to help me stay on top of the information that happened. So I want to jump over to Teams to show you how this recap can look with Copilot. Typically, after a meeting is finished, we will maybe watch the recording and try to see and find the places that are relevant for us. But now, after a meeting, we can also get this recap, which we can also enter from the top tab here. And this gives us a quick overview over the meeting that has just finished. On the right side here, I can see some meeting notes that I can quickly jump into to get some overview over what's been discussed. I see some follow-up tasks here, which I can also jump to get the context of what's been mentioned for me. And also other functions here to use the speaker timelines and navigate through, for example, topics here. This is something that comes automatically if you have on recording and transcription, but we can also dig deeper into the meeting itself by opening Copilot on the right here, and then being able to ask those specific questions. So for my Ignite meetings, I was able to then again ask those specific questions that were relevant for me after the meeting was finished. So for example here, I can ask a question such as what decisions were made in this meeting, and quickly being able to get an overview over recent decisions. And this can be a good feature both for the meetings that I wasn't able to attend to stay on top, but also the meetings that I did attend to be able to go back and go over different decisions that were made from that meeting, for example. And here we see Copilot summarizing a few of those decisions in an easy way for me to read. And all these responses will also give sources into the actual transcription, so I can see kind of who and when was this said in the meeting. So here I can continue to dig deeper into the questions that I find relevant, and but that was quickly how I want to show you how I prepared for Microsoft Ignite, both by using the Microsoft 365 chat to help stay on top of my information and see the recent things that were shared on the topics, but also how I use Copilot in Teams to catch up on those meetings that I wasn't able to attend. With that, I will give the word back to Björn. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vibeke. So if you now start to look behind, how did we make kind of the back end of enabling what Vibeke just showed you? So if you look inside Copilot for M365, kind of the strategy has been, if you have tried ChatGPT, wouldn't it be nice if you could apply that also to your personal data, to your corporate data, and include web knowledge, and then access it from the products you use daily at work? Can you access it from Outlook, from Teams, etc.? That has kind of been the ambition. Well, how do you then work on that problem? Because, well, the uniqueness is then your data, the company data, how they are going to embed that in the system. That is an effort that actually was started and driven from Norway, which is today called Microsoft Graph. How do you take all the assets and create the universal access to all data, personal and corporate-wise? And then you need to insert that into the Copilot stack. Now it's against, for us, then, what is the personal and corp data in M365 that we will use as a basis in addition to world knowledge and the LLM itself. So Vibeke could also ask, should I position myself better or something and use general knowledge on kind of data coming out of this? What are the challenges in order to do that? And I think are patterns that you can copy in your work if you're trying to build new experiences like we are doing. What does it mean to have communication and collaboration that understand the data? So if you start at the bottom, is first of all, what is your data strategy? For us, the scope of data was very, very obvious. We have obsessed about what are all the digital assets connected to human communication and collaboration. That has been the focus for the cloud infrastructure behind M365. But there are more things, kind of, is it sufficiently complete? Do you need to connect it with line of business data? Are there other data sources that you need to connect? And you need to have a data quality strategy. In web search, data quality strategy is kind of what sites are considered to be authoritative. That is the proxy for data quality. For us, we are looking at, if I send an email to Vibeke and she responds in 1 minute, it's a small signal that I'm important to her. If she sends to me and I wait 2 weeks, it's a small signal that you're not important to me. That's not the case, by the way. But if you aggregate all these micro signals, you can start to understand what is the people graph, what is the relationship that is part of kind of that quality fabric that you need to put in place. If you go to school medicine, for instance, school medicine was ineffective until they implemented a data quality strategy. You can only base procedures on the scientific results, and not on your aunt didn't get cancer after drinking green tea or something. There needs to be a publication. And when they had that requirement of data quality, effectiveness skyrocketed. So, and that can be your IP, right? Your strategy on data quality in your field. Then you need to implement something that we have done with Microsoft Graph, with what is the universal access to all this information. And then currently, the weakest, to also be self-critiquing, what Vibeke showed, is these small arrows between AI orchestration and the data, which is called RAG. So when Vibeke asked the question, how to prepare for Ignite and getting all that information, in the background there was an LLM looking at the prompt from Vibeke and understanding what data is needed to answer this question. And then it assumed, well, then I need to go into Vibeke's email and retrieve email. I need to go into chat. I need to check the meetings. I need to look at documents, etc. That is a classical search, just unfortunately not been a breakthrough in search. There's been improvements, but not a breakthrough on that level. So when the Copilot is not doing great, it's usually that the problem is in what is called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. Are you able to connect the data with the process? As opposed to when you talk in ChatGPT, where you talk directly to an LLM constructed on the knowledge. So what is your grounding strategy and what are the advances? This is one of the largest investment areas in Microsoft to progress the capabilities of that RAG component. And then you go through an orchestration tech. How can you then support the different scenarios that you're trying to enable? And on the top, how do you embed domain expertise, for instance, in prompting, which has become a science in its own right? And when you do development, there are going to be issues. There are fundamental differences between deterministic systems and non-deterministic systems. One of them is that you will make mistakes. And the question for all of us is, if a mistake is surfacing, what is your response time to improve it? That needs to be signed from day one and not kind of a wake-up call when it happens. So kind of, for us, it's kind of how do you create that agility? What is your response rate when you do have issues? And developing system with what I call monotonic engineering. Are there some parameters that define effectiveness of your system? For web search, that would be latency and the percentage of searches that result in good results for the user. Make sure that you always progress those elements. One of the parts when you're then going into domain-specific and building your own system, like we are doing with Copilot for M365, is what can you do on the top layer? How can you embed domain expertise or maybe requirements? Maybe there is a zero tolerance to hallucination in your field. How do you actually implement and secure that you have that zero tolerance to hallucination? And this has become a large field. It's possible to be an influencer on prompting in social media that you probably have seen, embedding it algorithmically. There is also a lot of discussion that a lot of this will be embedded in future models, but it will still be a field, but it will probably change. Just as an example of the impact, here we see one example. It looks a little bit complex, but for people that have done a little mathematics, it's actually quite simple. So you take GPT-4 and you add a little bit intelligence, just like you go to a doctor. You're not saying, I have an issue with my back, and ask the doctor for what is the most likely issue. You will actually, what is the potentially serious issue? It could be cancer, but that's only 0.01% probability or something. How and when should I differ that from just muscle problems, etc.? Doing that is able to reduce the error rate with 50%. So these are the type of things that even people go in and build specific systems, you have to capture that value on top. Then, if you want to buy stock in a company, if you're not a financial person and looking for a wrong evaluation, but you're looking for realities, then it is because you believe this company is going to become more relevant in the future. That's for me the only reason why you buy stock. And then if you lead a company, then it's, I think it's relevant to ask, well, what is your strategy to be more relevant in the future? And in Microsoft, we have done many mistakes in that area. We had a leader from .com until 2013 that said that the stock market is a betting machine short term and a weighing machine long term. So it's just to work and improve revenue and profit, and eventually the valuation of the company will be fantastic. And then we got a new CEO in 2013 that said, oh, that's actually wrong. You have to tell your investors, your employees, and the public at large why your company is going to be more relevant in the future. That's the only way you will get the best talent to work for you. And it's the only reason that you will get investors to buy your stock. So you need to have that theory, and you have to make it plausible, and you must also be accountable to that goal. So that was what Satya did first with the cloud transformation. We will make $20 billion on this date, and Amy Hood, the CFO, came every quarter and said, this is how we are progressing. And when that succeeded, then you take risk out of that claim. And now the transformation is AI. How can we lead the world with AI? So when you think about kind of the strategy in your company, it's not possible to do either or. How do you combine what are your perform strategy to improve your current business step by step, and what is your transform hypothesis? Have you formulated, have you communicated it broadly, and do you have a plausible plan to succeed on that? And if you think in the AI space, what Vibeke showed you is one example of what are the pieces can I start to gain expertise, understand what is working, what is not working, is an example of then driving employee productivity as a part of the productivity side. If you can crack kind of the right-hand side, how can I make humans and computers in a co-pilot setting do better work in my field, might be an area where you could arrive at a transform strategy for your company. If you look at some concrete examples, Nicolai Tangen, I've already talked about him, is a cool guy, and he said in one seminar that we were together with him, is that we are aiming for 20% productivity gain in 24. And I said, well, how did you compute that? Well, I just took it out of the air. He actually heard it from Sam Altman. But I think that's the perception. At least it shouldn't be a small percentage, it should be substantial percentages. Skatteetaten is another example of maybe the first step is actually to get into a learning mode, to start to apply, do what Vibeke told you, and develop your own hypothesis of what is working, what is not working. And these products are evolving things. Kind of week by week, month by month, they will become better and solve new user jobs. How will you be on that journey, contribute to that journey? Aker is an example which is doing exactly the second example from Vibeke in a sense. How can you, if you are a facilitator of the meeting, actually still pay attention to the meeting because your co-pilot has your back? And if you think about a meeting, historically has been this blob that it's actually not very accessible knowledge. You have to sit and spend an hour to get the knowledge that was discussed in the meeting. But if you looked at Vibeke, the knowledge was very accessible. You could share it, you could use it, you could apply it to solve problems in the future. If you then move to transform, the first introduction of GPT-4 had this slide, where Bill Gates had a challenge to us in Microsoft, is that if you know the Turing test, which is about can you separate between a human and a computer when you're talking to it? And he said, well, the new test I would like you to work on is when can you read a book and then pass an exam afterwards? And not just by quoting facts on certain pages, but reason about knowledge in that book. And this is essentially a lot of exams and how GPT-4 is approaching, yes, you can answer most exams. If you look on the video on the right-hand side, that's Christopher Frenning, here at Microsoft, that went to calculus, kind of the first math exam at the university here in Oslo, and he just took his mobile and took a picture of the problem set and asked the system to solve it. And the solution, this is about derivation of exponentials and partial derivatives and dot products and a little bit. So basic university math, but still it solves it perfectly. So you get an A in calculus by just taking a picture of the... But then, obviously, what is the transformation of education, which is probably one of the biggest and changes that will happen from this. And Everyone can have Harvard quality mentoring and tutoring for free in their pocket in the future. How are we going to do that? Personally, I'm a little bit conflicted. There are two ways you can live your life. One way is to populate your life with so much digital stimuli and activities that you don't have to reflect or think in your life. This is the most common choice. And the other choice is that you try to be present with your wife, your children, yourself, and a beautiful math problem in order to reflect and think. And if you do it wrong, we will probably even push people to the first category. But the opportunity to, even at university, people get demotivated. Bjørn, you asked me to have an if statement and a for loop, but it seems so irrelevant to the type of apps I would like to program. And when you look at AI, where you can do the opposite, you can start with the end result and iterate. So you can program cool apps without knowing any computer language. You can compose music without knowing any instrument to play. Kind of that opportunity to start with meaningful work and then injecting knowledge into that one is such more inspiring. We know that if you can afford a tutor for a child, they will do better in school. It's only because they can track your child and keep the child in that high energy zone where they have sufficient mastery and sufficient challenges to progress their understanding. That is possible to personalize with these tools, etc. You can solve any problem. Solving this one is clearly a transformative opportunity. In many areas, Wiersholm is one exciting one. Is your business model, first of all, to sell dollars per hour? It's a little bit boring because it has scale limitation based on how many people you have, right? If you can also interact with customers digitally, suddenly you have removed that limitation on how your company can scale. And here you see how do you interact with the customer base. You see kind of should we have recording of the voice in the court case and check all court data if it's consistent and give me advice on how to interrogate the person. And a class of very interesting elements is simulation, how to train people. Wiersholm is training people how to conduct in a court case. You see, for instance, in sexual abuse that there is research here at Oslo Met where they are training people how should you interview a child that potentially has been the victim in sexual abuse, that you sit and train in kind of how to do that and you develop people skills. You have for language learning, for customer interaction, so that element that you can actually get training on how to behave as a human is, I think, very, very interesting. Equinor obviously doing a lot. One of them was a gas trading element that they have implemented, but the entire stack that we talked about is obviously critical to Equinor. In health, this is the field that I've been working on prior to Microsoft, is the same problem as for lawyers with Wiersholm. There are startups in Norway looking at how should you interface with healthcare. In Norway, we have a fastlege challenge, as you know. There are two ways to look at it. One is that we have far too many fastlege because we are out of whack from rest of Europe. We have much more general practitioners per citizen than any other country in Europe. And at the same time, we have the biggest problem that there is a lack of general practitioners. So what's the problem? And one of the problems is potentially that you have to book an hour and you wait 2 weeks with your sick child, and then you start to consume this valuable time of this professional for anything that might need it or might not, in a sense. So can you start that interaction digitally? If you look on instruments like medical ultrasound, so this is Vigmed, which is done in Horten. And when I was working there, we thought that the role of an ultrasound machine is to produce pictures and numbers that the doctor should interpret. And that's reasonable, but it almost cost the life of my daughter and many other problems because we didn't realize that actually it should have been patient outcome. That wasn't feasible at the time. Now it's actually feasible. So how can you make sure that people acquire the best quality pictures, that they are autonomically correct, that they're measured correctly, and there is reasoning on diagnosis, support for the doctor to make sure that you don't make mistakes that cost the life of your patient. These are examples of ongoing projects happening as we speak. Another example is the SMB market, where a traditional approach has been Björn's startup would like to target industry X, and I know exactly what you need for this 5 or 10 or 100-person company, so I make it simple and I deliver just exactly what you need. And what you see with co-pilots is that they can translate complex products, platforms, to easy-to-use mechanisms. So instead of building that proprietary product, why don't I rather build a co-pilot that make you to solve this task, but in a platform that is much broader? What we are working on down in Bjørvika, for instance, is one thing that irritates me with a cool video that you started to look at. How many women do we have in the audience? I'm a little bit concerned about the diversity in AI, looking out over the field here. But I'm a nerd, so I'm fine when you don't have to interact with other people. I'm fine with that. That's actually very comforting for me, because you remove a lot of stress. And if you looked at that video, it was their life changed, watch me, when they stopped interacting with other people and they started to be enlightened by the mobile phone. Which is true, but we thought it's also possible to use AI to create higher value, more trusted, more meaningful human interaction. And there are many ways we can do that. So that is kind of a core focus area for us. If you then pick, and you don't think about is my company in the perform or transform category, they play together, and the best way to establish a transform strategy is usually that you start to play and perform. So when you think about how, from a leadership perspective, how we're going to approach this opportunity, then first of all, do you have the right leadership? And last year, when Satya gathered the top 200-300 people in Microsoft, and we talked about generative AI co-pilots for one day, and the second day, we only talked about adaptive leadership. And the concept in adaptive leadership is that there are two types of leaders. You have leaders, I know exactly what we're going to do, and I'm a strong, decisive leader, so I tell you exactly what you have to do. So it's just for you to do what I tell you to do, like in the military, and then we are fine. And then you have the other type of leaders. I don't know exactly how generative AI will play out in education, but I know there will be a revolution. And it will include micro-learning for people after they finish at university, etc. So I don't know, but how can you inspire people to go at that approach and make meaningful progress, remove risk, and make that concrete? What is needed for that? But there is clearly a new level of technical skill needed in leadership. So if you are in healthcare, or if you are in lawyer, for instance, is your leadership lawyers, or is your leadership doctors? Do you have technical capability to do that? And be honest with yourself, do you have urgency to transform? Or are you okay with the current and the current market valuation? So when you think about then building the strategy, how can you, each one of us, both as individuals and as teams and organizations, how can we lead in the era of AI? I think to build that, be clear in your own mind about what is actually our strategy in terms of AI from a perform perspective. Are there elements of what Vibeke showed you that we should try to apply? Should we try to find other elements in that area? How does it apply to our industry? What is our transform element, that diagram that I showed that we are working on for M365? How does that translate to your area? And at the bottom here, you see kind of some areas that are currently the most frequent areas that are pursued. So on behalf of Norway, in a sense, let's both be a consumer and apply AI, but let's also participate. Kind of Morten Gudvin from Universitet in Agder, he has a good quote, what is the developing countries in the future? Developing countries in the past is countries that is producing raw material, sending it to another country to produce high-value products and buying them back at a high price. And in the future, it will be people that produce data but cannot make sense of them and have to send them to somebody else to make sense of them. That is the future developing countries and companies and individuals, and how can we participate in that economy? And to have urgency on that on behalf of your company and for Norway for value creation, I think is a challenge and a responsibility that we share together. And in terms of that, I would like to invite Lasse Andersen, who is Partner Solution Architect. Microsoft cannot do this alone. How can we partner on this challenge?
Thank you, Björn, for a fantastic keynote and for introduction. And there we have sound as well. Great. So I think you have made it quite clear that everyone in this room needs to start thinking of how will this AI and generative AI technology in particular change your business processes and disrupt your business. And we want to support all of you on that journey to actually do something with this. And to do that and to help all of you, we really do need to scale through our partners. And that's why we are now sharing our AI frameworks and tools and demos, etc., with our strongest AI partners in the Norwegian market to be able to support all of you on that journey. Because we believe that if we put our people together with our partners, industry knowledge, and the customers in one room, we will find high potential use cases for AI and generative AI. And that's one of the key things we want to do with this initiative, is to work closer together, all three of us, to actually find and implement AI solutions. We are currently running or planning the enablement sessions for these partners. They will be ready to take you on in April already. And if you want to do this together with us, reach out to your account team or any of these partners, and we're happy to have you on board. That's it from me, Björn. Back to you.
Thank you so much. One of my favorite quotes from American literature is from Spider-Man, that with great power comes great responsibility. So that's kind of my sense, that we are at this kind of once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to can we use this AI in a way that benefits humanity. And it rests the responsibility, I feel, on me, on Microsoft, and all of us to make sure that we make timely progress on behalf of humanity and behalf of the future of value production in Norway. How can we do that? Thank you, everyone.